All right, so I'm nervous now. All right, 1, 2, 3. Oh, a little bit of a fail, but that's okay.
Did you know that skirt steak is best prepared with a high heat cooking method like grilling or pan searing? That is what I'm going to do in the video today, and we're going to make one of my favorite sandwiches, the cheesesteak. Simple ingredients: steak, onion, cheese, and bread. Sometimes just the simplest dish with the simplest ingredients can be the best way to have it. I also have two different things I like to add condiment-wise. One is kind of how I've always done it, and the other one is my new favorite. It adds a little zing to it, but before we get to topping the cheesesteaks, we got to make them. This is about 1.5 pounds, and that'll make either 2 really nice sized, hungry person cheesesteaks or 4 good sized sandwiches. First thing to do is cut it in half, because we're actually going to freeze the meat for about 20-30 minutes. That way it just kind of makes it a little easier to cut. So it's important that you cut skirt steak the correct way, no matter how you prepare it. So this is an important step. So we're going to cut it in half, and this cut is with the grain. Then we'll put the pieces in the freezer for about 25 minutes. In the meantime, we can prepare the rest of the sandwich, which in my case is just an onion. So if you like mushrooms, green peppers, red peppers, onions, this would be the time to cut all those up too. And I may have gone a little overkill by using a mandolin, but I did want these onions nice and thin. After your veggies are all chopped up and on standby, you can start slicing the skirt steak. So you can see it's stiff, right? It's not frozen all the way through. The more you handle it, the more it'll defrost, and it'll happen pretty quickly. So we already cut it in half, right? Then we froze it. So we're going to cut the halves into half, and then turn the half, and we're going to cut it against the grain. Nice and thin slices, right? And then the partially frozen beef just kind of makes it a little easier to slice. And this skirt steak's gonna have a whole lot of nice flavor because it's just a really flavorful cut. And cutting it up this way will make it very tender, even though it's gonna be cooked all the way through. Which normally, if I was just like throwing a skirt steak on the grill, I'd cook it to medium because it can get pretty tough if it's overcooked, right? This, though, will be perfect for a sandwich. Super tender, melt in your mouth, loads of beef flavor. It's good stuff.
And then we're going to do this in the other piece too, but I think you get the idea. And then we're just going to come through and just kind of cut them into bite-sized pieces. So they will shrink up a little bit too. But then this is kind of our pile of cheesesteak meat here.
To all the cheesesteak police, this by no means is a Philly cheesesteak. I've actually never been to Philly, so I've never had a true Philly cheesesteak, but someday. I've had a lot of good cheesesteaks, and I've had some bad cheesesteaks. However, this one I think is a pretty good sandwich, and that's why I wanted to show you one of the ways you can do it at home.
There we go. Our skirt steak is all cut up into pieces. Some are thicker, some are thinner, some are a little bit longer. That's okay. Let's go over to the stove and make some cheesesteak.
I'm using a non-stick griddle that fits over 2 of the burners on my stovetop, and you could use cast iron. You could even use like a 10 or 12 inch frying pan. Since this is non-stick, I do want to give it a little bit of oil so the heat does have something to transfer to. Once the pan is up to temp, medium lowish, you can start transferring the meat to it. And you want to do this in batches. You don't want to crowd the pan. So we have another bowl standing by where we can collect the cooked meat, and that is when we'll season it with some salt and some pepper.
When you realize your camera's not recording. All right, excellent. So we took some of the meat, not all of it, put it in a pan, spread it out, kind of gave each piece its own little place to cook. If you're working in like a little smaller skillet, you don't have this much room, you might have to do 3 or 4 batches. I've done that plenty of times in just a small little 10, 12 inch frying pan. If you're doing this outside on a griddle, on a Blackstone or whatever, you probably could do the whole thing in one go. Just depends how much space you have, because you don't want it to crowd. Crowding will just make it steam. You want a nice sear, and we want to make sure our camera's still recording. Give the video a thumbs up because the camera is recording. Pretty much where you want it. So we'll just kind of slide it around, right? You can see the pieces of meat that were red, still pink a little bit, just from hitting the pan for, what, 10 seconds. There's pretty much no more red here, so we'll kind of gather this in the corner here. Put it into a clean bowl. Give it a good amount of salt and some pepper. I'm really cooking here, so put some pepper on there. Don't have time to change the camera angle really fast so you can see me grate pepper, but salt and pepper on the meat, next batch. Got a hot pan to work with here, you know? Making some cheesesteaks. Pretty sure we'll have enough space, so we'll get the rest of the meat in there. Okay, this is looking beautiful. We'll just kind of move it around, touch it for the first time, if you will. Just till we start to see some of that pink disappear. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. So now that all of our meat is done, just kind of spread out those onions. Onions I am going to hit with a little bit of salt. Cheese is in the refrigerator. I'm going to grab that. While we got a little second here, I'm going to show you my cheese. Provolone is what I like to use for this, and this is thin sliced. So this stuff is going to melt very fast. Love provolone on cheesesteak. I really turned down the heat too on the stove because I didn't want these to like cook up in 30 seconds. But the thing that's going to hold all this together, the bread. I like to use soft bread, so I got these soft sub rolls here. But I mean, you can kind of use whatever bread you like. These are, you know, they're soft, they're fluffy, but the outside is, you know, still kind of a little crust to it. Not much, but I love these for these sandwiches, for sure. What I like to do is just kind of come in here, bread knife, right? Open it up a little bit. I like to keep it hinged, right? I don't want it all the way through. I want the hinge like a door, you know? And we're going to kind of use this to kind of gauge when we pile our steak how big of the pile needs to be, right? Let's build a steak sandwich. So we're going to split it in two and kind of see where we're at. Keep this one actually, I'm going to turn this burner off. Keep this one on low because it's still pretty hot. So the steak was sitting around for a little bit, but it's basically warming right back up. So we want to bring a little onion into play here, right? If you had your pile of mushrooms, your pile of peppers, drag over what you want for one sandwich. Then we'll kind of throw in a little more. Kind of let everybody warm back up. You know, maybe your mushrooms you're done, you can do the same thing you did with the steak. Put them in a bowl, put them in a dish, you know, if you don't have enough surface area. You know, keep them off the heat so they don't overcook, you know, if you needed to. I don't play with mushrooms. Every now and then, I'll play with mushrooms. Not on cheesesteak, though. So I'm going to kind of put this in a pile that I think is the size of the bread. See how well I do here. Grab our bread, open this bad boy up, and yeah, this looks pretty accurate. Good size. I did a good job with that guesstimation. So this is the point where we want to take our cheese slices. Or if you had the cheese whiz, you could throw, you know, cheese whiz on top of that. You want good cheese coverage. And that cheese is cold. It just got out of the fridge. Lid. It'll just kind of trap some steam. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's just some steam coming up there. It'll just kind of hover over the cheese and help melt it from the top down. Alternatively, and even better because it'll toast, well, not toast, but it'll warm up the bread, is literally pop the bread on it, give it a little press, and this will kind of warm up the bread, which ain't a bad thing. All right, so I'm nervous now. All right, 1, 2, 3. Oh, a little bit of a fail, but that's okay. I mean, come on. Steak, cheese, and onions. This thing's marvelous. I'm going to cut this in half. Kind of show you a cross section. There we go. Call me weird. I don't know if this is a Philly thing or what. I like mayonnaise on my cheesesteak. Another thing I like, not a sponsor, by the way, but Buffalo Wild Wings Southwestern Ranch. This stuff is excellent, right? So we'll throw a little bit of that on there. I'm gonna throw a little bit more on there. Good stuff. Didn't even know this was out like in stores. Walmart, I think, has it, by the way. Would always get this at B-Dubs. It's like awesome on fries. I love it on their fries. Okay, so here we go. My skirt steak sandwich. Let me know if you give it a try. Thanks for watching Cooking with Chris. Let me know in the comments how you like your cheesesteak. I like it either way. It's the awesome sandwich.